Part 1. I used to think life had finally settled into something good. After years of grinding through work, saving for a down payment, juggling weekend trips with mandatory family events, Lisa and I had built a life that felt almost enviable from the outside. We had the house with the picket fence, a reliable circle of friends, steady jobs, and dreams whispered into the dark after the lights were out. And at the heart of it all, or so I thought, was trust. A bond one believed could take a hit or two without breaking. It's almost funny, thinking back to those early days. How proud I was walking into parties with her on my arm. How much I trusted her laughter across the room, the way her hand would brush mine when no one was looking. I used to believe we were the real thing, one of those couples who would grow old bickering about grocery lists and thermostat settings. Then the small things started. The first cracks. At first, I told myself not to overthink it. The late nights at work, understandable. Quarter-end reports, new projects, a demanding boss. The gym session she started picking up after years of ignoring the treadmill in our garage, good for her, right? But then came the new wardrobe. I found myself blinking when she'd walk downstairs in outfits that seemed too polished, too deliberate. High heels to grab milk at 8 p.m.? A fresh coat of lipstick to drop off dry cleaning? I asked about it once, joking lightly. She laughed, a little too fast, and said, "It's just nice to feel good sometimes. Don't read into it, Michael." So, I didn't. At least, not at first. Then her phone became a fixture in her hand, always tilted away from me when I walked into the room. The light from the screen casting shadows across her face late into the night, long after I had rolled over to sleep. Sometimes, when I stirred, I'd catch the way she would lock it quickly, sliding it under her pillow as if it had burned her fingertips. And still, I made excuses. Maybe she was just planning something special. Maybe she was talking to her sister about birthday plans. Maybe. I tried to focus on the positives. Our friends still invited us out. Lisa still laughed at my dumb jokes. We still hosted the occasional backyard barbecue, putting on our well-worn dance of perfect couple for whoever was watching. But something in her eyes had changed. A flicker of detachment that I caught when she thought I wasn't looking. A small, almost imperceptible withdrawal in her hugs, like she was bracing against touch rather than leaning into it. One night, while brushing my teeth, I watched her through the mirror. She sat on the edge of our bed, phone pressed tightly against her chest like a shield. She was smiling, a soft, private smile I'd never seen pointed at me in months. Something twisted inside me then. A sharp, primal instinct that something precious had slipped out of my grasp without me even realizing it. I thought about confronting her. But what would I say? Why do you smile like a stranger now? Why does my presence make you tuck your phone away like a guilty child? It sounded insane when I rehearsed it in my head. Instead, I started cataloging the moments, collecting small betrayals like pebbles filling my pockets, dragging me down. Late returns from work. Client dinners that never seemed to involve any actual clients I knew. The way she suddenly needed to clear her head, with long walks alone, phone in hand, always texting. Even Jason, my best friend, my best man, the brother I never had, seemed different. He'd always been around. Poker nights, football Sundays, camping trips that left us laughing around dying fires. But lately, he had been elusive. Cancellations. Dodged calls. Weird, half-hearted excuses about being swamped when we tried to catch up. The two people I trusted most moving just slightly out of my reach, just enough that I couldn't quite catch them. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people you love and feeling invisible. It's like watching your own life through bulletproof glass, close enough to see it slip away, powerless to stop it. One Friday evening, Lisa came home late again. Hair windswept, cheeks flushed, laughing at something she didn't bother to explain. She caught me staring and stopped, like she realized she had let something slip. For a moment, she looked almost guilty. Then, faster than a blink, she slipped on that easy smile again and kissed me lightly on the cheek. "Sorry, babe," she said. Traffic was a nightmare. Her fingers tightened around her purse. Her perfume was different, heavier, muskier, almost unfamiliar. I stood there in the doorway, numb, nodding like a bobblehead, saying all the right things. Inside, though, a voice that I had tried to silence finally rose to a roar. Something is wrong. Something is very, very wrong. And somehow, I knew. The life I thought we had was already dead. I just hadn't signed the death certificate yet. Part 2. They say when you start digging, you have to be ready for what you'll find. I wasn't. Not even close. At first, it was small things. Lisa left her laptop open one night while she showered. An innocuous enough scene, but the flashing notification caught my eye. An encrypted messaging app. Not the standard texts or emails we used. Something secret, something that didn't leave a trail. I told myself not to snoop. I told myself trust mattered. But trust felt like a joke by then, a hollow echo in a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. I clicked. The screen went black. Password required. When she came out of the bathroom, she saw me sitting on the bed, the laptop still open beside me. She froze, just a beat too long. "What are you doing?" she asked lightly, but her voice was stretched thin. "Thought I'd look up movie times," I lied, my voice casual, my chest hammering. She smiled too wide and said, "Next time, just use your phone, babe." Then she slammed the lid shut with a little too much force. Later that night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her even breaths as she slept beside me. I realized I didn't even know what she was dreaming about anymore. The next day, it escalated. I found a receipt tucked into her coat pocket while doing laundry. Not from the grocery store or Target like usual. It was from a high-end jewelry store downtown, the kind of place that didn't even display prices in the window. A delicate necklace, price circled in heavy ink. It wasn't my birthday. It wasn't our anniversary. And unless Lisa had developed an expensive habit of buying herself gifts and hiding them from me, it wasn't for her. When I asked, she blinked at me like I was speaking another language. "God, Michael," she snapped, pulling her coat from my hands. "You're paranoid. I bought it for Mom. Mother's Day is coming up." Mother's Day was 2 months away, but I didn't say anything. Because something inside me, something old and raw, knew it wouldn't matter. The truth wasn't going to come willingly from her lips. I started paying closer attention. Her scent was changing. Some nights she came home with perfume so thick it clung to her hair, her clothes, her skin. Other nights, it was the faint hint of a different cologne altogether, something sharp and masculine that didn't belong to me. The excuses piled up. A new yoga class at a studio clear across town. A book club that met at random hotels for atmosphere. A work trip that didn't line up with her company's event schedule. Each excuse was wrapped in just enough logic to make me feel like the crazy one for questioning it. And when I did ask, gently, trying to find my footing, she would tilt her head and smile sadly, like I was a wounded animal. "Michael," she would say, her voice dripping pity. "You have to trust me. If you can't, then what are we even doing?" I started doubting myself. Started wondering if maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was just insecure. Maybe all marriages went through weird patches, quiet spaces where your partner became a little bit of a stranger. But then came the credit card statements. I noticed a new card linked to our joint account. A platinum card I never signed for. At first, I thought it was fraud, a mistake by the bank. Until I saw the charges. Dinner at restaurants we never visited together. Hotel stays. Luxury spa treatments. All clustered around the days she claimed to be working late or meeting the girls. I printed out the statements and left them on the kitchen counter. When she came home, she breezed past them at first, dumping her keys into the bowl by the door. Then she saw the papers, paused, and slowly, deliberately, picked them up. "What's this?" she asked, coolly. "You tell me," I said, voice steady even though my hands were shaking under the table. She barely glanced at the charges before dropping the papers back onto the counter. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," she said with a sigh. "Those are for work events. Client meetings, networking, in hotel rooms?" I asked. Her lips thinned. "You wouldn't understand," she said. "You're not in my world. You don't get how these things work. Maybe if you were a little more ambitious." The slap wasn't physical, but I felt it just the same. I didn't argue. Not then. There was no point. Instead, I started noticing other changes. The way she flinched when I touched her shoulder absent-mindedly. The way she locked herself in the bathroom for hours, phone pressed tight against her ear. The way Jason's name came up less and less in conversation, even though he used to be practically family. One night, coming home late from a solo dinner, I spotted her car parked outside a sleek boutique hotel on the edge of town. No business meetings. No client events scheduled that night. I sat in my car across the street and watched her shadow move past a lit window on the 3rd floor. Pacing. Laughing. Not with me. Not for me. Something inside me cracked wide open. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just betrayal. It was something bigger. Something messier. A whole other life, carved out of the pieces I thought we shared. And as I sat there, engine idling, a cold certainty settled over me. It's worse than I thought. Part 3. Some betrayals come screaming through your life, shattering everything at once. Others are quieter, like a slow rot spreading through the beams of a house, until one day the floor collapses beneath your feet. Mine crept in, uninvited, slow and venomous. The first death blow landed in the form of a package left on our doorstep. No return address. Just a simple brown envelope, taped shut with the kind of care you give to something meant to hurt. Inside were photographs, printed, not digital. Old school. Personal. Someone wanted me to feel every cut personally. Lisa, standing outside a hotel downtown, laughing up at Jason, my best friend, my best man, the guy I once said was closer than a brother. Lisa, leaning into Jason as he opened the car door for her, hand lingering on his chest just a second too long. Jason, tucking a loose strand of her hair behind her ear the same way I used to when we were young and reckless. None of it was graphic. None of it needed to be. The way they looked at each other said everything words never could. There was more. I almost wish there hadn't been. A flash drive taped to the last photo. Against my better judgment, I plugged it into my laptop. The files inside were a punch to the gut. Screenshots of conversations between them, hundreds of messages dating back almost a year. They joked about their secret missions, Lisa calling me clueless and Jason referring to me as the obstacle. Photos of dinners and restaurants we never visited, selfies in hotel rooms I didn't recognize, tickets to concerts I was never invited to. They weren't just hiding. They were building a life together. Without me. And buried deep in a folder labeled Contracts, I found it, a fake business. A consulting firm registered under both their names. Secret accounts linked to that fake business. Thousands of dollars missing from our savings, reappearing in neatly organized deposits somewhere I had no access to. I scrolled through spreadsheets tracking every withdrawal, every stolen dollar that had been meant for our future. The life Lisa and I built had been pawned off, piece by piece, to fund their private world. There were even rental applications. Plans for a new apartment downtown, big enough for two. It wasn't even speculation anymore. It was real, concrete, undeniable. And just when I thought the ground couldn't sink any lower beneath me, I found the final blow. A medical document, scanned and tucked into one of the folders. Lab results. A prenatal consultation form. Estimated due date, 6 months from now. Lisa was pregnant. Not with me. Not with the man she'd shared vows and mortgages and Christmas mornings with. With Jason. My best friend had put a child inside my wife while they smiled at me across dinner tables, while they stood beside me at birthday parties and holiday celebrations. My hands went cold on the keyboard. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel sadness. I felt nothing. A numbness deeper than anything I'd ever known washed over me, hollowing me out from the inside. Like my soul had quietly packed a bag and left without saying goodbye. I closed the laptop. Sat there staring at the darkened screen, my reflection faint against the glass, a man I barely recognized. In the distance, upstairs, I heard Lisa's muffled voice on a call. Laughter. Soft, private laughter. I wondered who she was talking to. I wondered if they were whispering names for the baby. I wondered if she thought she could keep up the charade long enough to trap me into raising someone else's child. For a long time, I just sat there, letting the silence fill my ears. The old version of me, the one who believed in us, who thought loyalty still meant something, died somewhere in that silence. And something colder took its place. I didn't storm upstairs. I didn't smash anything. Instead, I got to work. I started copying files, backing up bank statements, saving every text message I could pull from Lisa's phone backups, printing every receipt, every hotel confirmation, every invoice from their fake company. And now, documenting the pregnancy. Evidence. Hard, brutal, undeniable. This wasn't going to end with me shouting at her over dinner, begging for explanations she would twist and warp. There would be no shouting at all. No forewarning. Only consequences. I would gut this quietly. Systematically. The way she had gutted our marriage without ever once raising her voice. I looked around the kitchen, the photos of our vacation still pinned to the fridge, the mug she bought me last Christmas still sitting in the sink, and realized none of it meant anything anymore. It was all props on a stage set for a lie. I stood up slowly, feeling strangely calm, like a soldier preparing for war. No rage. No pleading. No hope. Just a slow, calculated burn rising inside me. She thought she knew me. She thought I would crumble, beg, maybe even forgive. She didn't understand the man sitting at this kitchen table anymore. She didn't realize yet. The most dangerous man is the one who has nothing left to lose. I smiled, a small, bitter thing, and whispered into the empty house. You have no idea what's coming. Part 4. Betrayal isn't just about broken hearts. It's about broken futures. And Lisa and Jason hadn't just destroyed the life we built together, they had methodically dismantled it, brick by brick, laughing while they did it. I thought the pregnancy was the worst of it. I thought the secret bank accounts were the depth of their ambition. But darkness has layers. And betrayal, it seemed, wasn't content with just my marriage or my trust. It wanted everything. While reviewing old credit reports with my lawyer, another bomb dropped. Identity fraud. New credit cards opened under my name. Thousands spent in luxury boutiques, hotels, expensive dinners. Not only had they siphoned money from our savings, they were borrowing against my future without my consent. All of it hidden beneath forged signatures and fake business expenses tied to their fake consulting firm. The same fake firm Jason had registered, using my personal information as a guarantor. I wasn't just a ghost in their story. I was a pawn, a stepping stone. And the final knife twist? Some of the rental applications they filed for their future home listed me as a co-signer, as if I would fund their new life. As if I would unknowingly pay rent for their little love nest, complete with a nursery for Jason's child growing inside my wife. That was the moment I stopped feeling anything at all. The old Michael, the forgiving man, the patient man, was long dead. What stood in his place now was something colder, sharper, methodical. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I would dismantle them the way they had dismantled me, piece by careful piece. First came the legal preparations. I quietly froze all remaining joint accounts. Filed fraud claims on every credit line opened without my permission. Blocked Lisa's access to anything tied to my name. The bank froze the fake consulting accounts pending investigation. I met with the district attorney's office, handed over a neatly organized packet of evidence, screenshots, bank statements, emails, Lisa's pregnancy records tied to fraudulent insurance claims. Jason and Lisa were about to discover that financial crimes don't vanish just because you're smiling in selfies. Next, I bought time. I played the loving husband, the trusting best friend. I suggested we throw a party, a business success party to celebrate our so-called consulting venture's great start. A chance to gather all our friends, family, colleagues, and a few special guests from the district attorney's office, invited under the radar. Lisa hesitated for a moment, suspicion flickering in her eyes. But Jason, cocky and reckless, slapped me on the back and declared it brilliant. Perfect. The night of the party, I stood by the front door, greeting guests with a practiced smile, my heart beating slow and steady. Jason arrived first, dressed too sharply, grinning like a man convinced he had won. Lisa followed, radiant, a glow about her that only made the bile rise in my throat. I let them bask in it. The food, the laughter, the clinking of champagne glasses. For an hour, I made small talk. For an hour, I let them parade their false success across the room like royalty. And then, as the clock struck 9, I stepped onto the small stage by the fireplace and tapped a spoon against my glass. The room quieted. Heads turned. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, voice steady as bedrock. Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate a journey, a partnership, a future. Lisa beamed beside Jason, clutching his arm lightly. They thought it was their victory lap. I clicked the remote in my hand. The projector screen behind me flared to life. At first, it showed simple photos. Lisa and Jason together in hotel lobbies, restaurants, hidden corners of the city. Gasps rippled through the room. Then the slides changed. Bank records, fraudulent contracts, forged signatures, screenshots of Lisa's and Jason's messages, laughing about my stupidity, celebrating stealing from me while smiling across holiday dinners. Then came the final slide. An ultrasound. Lisa's name printed across the top. Due date circled. I turned back to the room. My wife is pregnant, I said quietly. Murmurs of congratulations rose automatically, before crashing into stunned silence as I finished. And the father is standing right beside her. Every face turned toward Jason. He went stiff, the color draining from his face, Lisa's hand falling away from his arm like a dead leaf. And just so everyone knows, I continued, voice hardening. Both of them will be hearing from my attorneys and from the district attorney's office in the coming days. Identity theft, financial fraud, conspiracy to defraud, wire fraud, insurance fraud. The list goes on. I looked at Lisa, really looked at her, one last time. She wasn't the woman I married anymore. Maybe she never was. She stood there frozen, mouth open, no words finding her lips. Jason staggered back like he'd been punched. I slipped the remote into my pocket. I didn't wait for the chaos to erupt. I didn't need to hear the gasps or see the fallout. I simply walked out the front door into the cool night air, my hands steady at my sides. Behind me, I heard shouting, the rising tide of panic and shame and disbelief. But none of it touched me anymore, because the man who had walked into that party was gone. What remained was something forged in betrayal and fire, and absolutely untouchable. Part 5. Rebuilding doesn't look like the movies. It doesn't come with inspirational speeches or tearful montages. It looks like empty apartments with secondhand furniture. It looks like staring at ceilings at 3 a.m., wondering how you didn't see it sooner. It looks like silence. A heavy, merciless silence that follows you everywhere. After the party, the world moved on. At least, it pretended to. Jason lost his job first. The fraud exposure hit him like a wrecking ball. Lisa disappeared into the cracks, a few old friends trying to patchwork her broken reputation. But the baby bump growing under her clothes was harder to hide than their shame. They tried to reach me. Messages, emails, voicemails that started out defensive, turned pleading, then fell into quiet despair. I ignored every single one. I sold the house within a month, packed what little still felt like mine into 2 battered suitcases, moved into a 1-bedroom rental on the far side of town where no one knew my face. Starting over sounds brave until you realize how much of your soul you lost along the way. I worked. I ate alone. I slept fitfully. I didn't date. I didn't trust. I built my new life like a bunker, functional, cold, untouchable. The man who had loved Lisa with open hands and open heart was dead. All that was left was discipline, routine, quiet determination. And just when I thought the worst was behind me, the final knife twisted. It was at a Sunday lunch, sitting across from my brother, Daniel. The one person who had been there from the start, who had stood beside me at my wedding, who had sworn he always had my back. He sat there, shuffling his fork around his plate, unable to meet my eyes. "You knew," I said finally, my voice flat. Daniel swallowed hard, wiped his mouth like he could wipe the guilt off his face. I didn't know everything," he muttered. I suspected. Jason slipped up a few times. I thought it was just harmless. I didn't think. You didn't think it mattered. I finished for him. He flinched, like the words hit harder than a slap. "Look, I didn't want to blow up your life, Mike," he said. "I thought maybe it would burn out. Maybe Lisa would come to her senses. I didn't want to be the guy who ruined everything." "You weren't afraid of ruining everything," I said, my voice cutting through the cheap diner air like a knife. "You were afraid of being uncomfortable." He looked down, said nothing. And just like that, another thread snapped. Family, loyalty, blood, meaningless. Betrayal didn't just wear Lisa's face. It wore the face of my own brother, too. I stood up, tossing a few bills on the table. Daniel looked up at me, desperate, maybe even ashamed. I didn't care. "You chose your comfort over my life," I said quietly. "Now live with it." I walked out into the freezing afternoon, the wind cutting through my jacket, but I didn't shiver. I welcomed the cold. It sharpened me. Rebirth is a violent thing. It isn't gentle. It tears you down to the bare studs of who you are and demands you rebuild, brick by bloody brick. I became harder, sharper. I ran miles before dawn, pounding the pavement until my legs burned. I took night classes, learned new skills, started a consulting firm, a real one, under my own name, built from scratch. I stopped explaining myself to anyone. Trust? Trust was dead. I didn't mourn it. I didn't need it. Every time doubt crept in, every time loneliness clawed at the edges of my mind, I remembered the faces of the people who smiled at me while sharpening knives behind my back. I remembered Lisa's private laughter, Jason's easy betrayal, Daniel's cowardly silence. And I pressed harder. There's no healing in betrayal. Only forging. Only fire. And I burned hotter every day. I didn't forgive. I didn't forget. I simply became someone they could never touch again. They thought they had broken me, reduced me to rubble. They thought I would stay down. They thought wrong. Because when you are burned to ash, you don't rebuild the same man. You become something new, something untouchable, something forged in pain and sharpened by betrayal. And when I looked in the mirror months later, a stranger stared back, cold, precise, unbreakable. And I knew. They thought betrayal would end me. They mistook the fall for the end. I rose, forged by fire, unbreakable. The end.